No-code tools like Flutterflow are fantastic for designing your app just the way you need it. However, your app isn't just about fancy UI and simple user interactions. A real production app needs to handle demanding user requests and integrate with third-party tools beyond UI capabilities. Today, I'll share 5 essential and practical workflows that must be implemented with a third-party tool to ensure your app runs smoothly and efficiently. These workflows manage complex processes that Flutterflow alone can't handle, ensuring your app is both beautiful and highly functional. Mastering these workflows would allow you to craft and launch any demanding mobile or web app quickly and easily. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources are available to view and or clone from our amazing Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our incredible, rapidly growing Patreon community, then you can learn more via the first link in the description and hopefully become a member. Now, the tool that we're going to be using today is called BuildShip, which makes it really easy to create complex flows and integrations. Plus, it's also heavily integrated with AI, allowing you to create pretty much any integration that you can think of. Now, the first type of workflow that your app is definitely going to be using in different scenarios is called an event trigger. So what exactly is an event trigger? Well, an event trigger is a trigger that gets executed whenever you have some type of an event, okay? So as an example, we have here a Supabase trigger, which gets triggered whenever there's some kind of a Supabase event, okay? And so as an example, in this scenario, with Supabase, anytime you create a new user, you have a new record created in this table here, in this auth users table. And that is an important trigger because anytime you have a new user, you may want to send that user an email. Or a more common scenario is that you may want to create a row in this other table that may store additional user information. So if I jump to my Supabase dashboard here, I have here my tables. Now, if I go into my auth schema here, and I select this users table, this is a table that's provided to you by Supabase. It's a built-in read-only table. You cannot modify it. And it contains user records of all the users that have access or may have access to your app. So if I come back to this authentication here and I add a user here and I say create a new user, I will eventually have that record in this table here. And so anytime a new user is created, that is an important event. And you may want to do other things whenever that event is triggered. So here what I did was I have a Supabase trigger here. And this thing is going to trigger anytime a new user is created. So anytime you either do it manually from the dashboard or a new user signs up via your app. And in this case, what we want to do is we want to create another record in this other table here called user extra, right? So if we come back to our database here and we go to this public schema, we have here a table that I have created beforehand that is going to contain a one-to-one mapping to our users. And the reason we need that is because we cannot store additional user metadata in that other table because that is a read-only table. Okay, so I went ahead and created this beforehand, but these records here are going to be automatically created by our BuildShip workflow, okay? And so as an example, let's say I head back to BuildShip and I open up my logs. And as you can see, I have some success logs here. And this log functionality is a great way to see exactly what's happening. Okay, so it's a great way to see all your executed workflows. It's also a great way to debug if something would go wrong or if something is not happening to what you are expecting. Okay, so if we come back here, And let's say I go into my authentication and I go ahead and create a new user manually, right? So I click here, add user, and I say create a new user. And let's say we're creating a user for Tom, right? Tom at tom.com. Let's say I create a password for Tom, okay? And I say auto confirm user and I say create user. Now, once I click that, there's going to be a new record created automatically, which will automatically trigger this workflow and follow these steps. Okay, so if I go ahead and do this right here, let's say create user, we're going to see this create user here. But if we come back to our database here, to our tables and go into user extra, we see this new record being created. And it's automatically tied to that user, right? We're not creating just any record. We're creating a record that's automatically tied to that user. And if you go back into BuildShip and you refresh your logs, you're going to see a new log record here that took almost 2 seconds to execute. And this is the trigger that was just triggered when we created that new user, right? So you can take a look at this and you can see exactly what's happening. And so let's take a closer look at this workflow here, right? This is a Supabase trigger. We needed to specify a project reference for your specific Supabase project that you can get via the settings and the API. We have these events set to insert because we only care about insert, right? We don't really care about anything else. Although it might be a good idea to also do a delete. So anytime you delete a user, you may want to also delete this record here. And so this is something that you may want to do in your app as well. But right now we just have this insert here. Schema is off. Table name is users. Okay, so this is going to get triggered. Now, once this is triggered, this thing is going to get executed. And this is a Supabase node that you can find by clicking here, and you can simply type Supabase. And when you do that, you're going to see all your Supabase operations. And what I'm using here is this create row here. That's all I'm using. And I just simply filled it out with the API key and the API URL. I gave it a table name. But here's where you need to pay attention, right? Because for the object, we need to specify one field. And that is going to be the user ID that we wanted to link to, okay? And so here what we are doing is we are referencing this request body, okay? Because this thing here, right? So if we come over here and we click on edit and you go into output, you can see that this node is going to output different things, right? So the type, which is, you know, whether it's an insert, update, etc., the table, the schema, the record, and the old record, right? So why do we have two? Well, if you're going to be updating things, right, you're going to have the old record and you're going to have the new record, right? When you're inserting, you obviously are not going to have the old record, right? So you will only reference this record. And that is why here, if we come back out, we come back over here, I'm referencing this record. We do not have an old record because we're not updating, right? We don't have old data. Okay, so in this case, you're going to be referencing this record here. And we just care about the ID because we just want to set one field, right? So if we come back over here, there's lots of fields that we can set: age, city, state. And right now we're not setting them, right? All we're doing is setting this user ID. These two fields are created automatically. Now, you may have other situations where you might have a trigger and you may have these fields defined, or you might have the logic that is needed to, you know, create these fields to arrive at the right data. So you might have the logic for the age, you might have the logic for the city, for the state. Maybe, you know, you are looking at when the user was created. Was the user created during the day? Was the user created at night? And you may use that logic to, you know, arrive at a certain value for another field, right? So maybe, you know, you want to see if this is a user that's, you know, working at night or a user working during the day. So you may, you know, have some logic on that specific field and use it here somewhere, right? But for now, we're not setting these fields, but that's okay because these fields could be set later, right? The most important thing that, you know, I want to stress is that, you know, if you're building an app that's going to be relying on this table here and is going to be relying on the data here, you want to make sure that there is at least a record there. It's not that important that, you know, you might not have the fields right away, but at least you want to make sure that you have the record, because when you have your app your app is going to assume that you're going to have this record here. And it's going to, it's going to maybe save, maybe it's going to set a field here. It's going to pull up the field. It's going to do something. But the key here is you want to make sure that you have this record created. Because if you do not have that record, you're going to have issues with your app, because now you need the logic. You want to make sure that, hey, did we create that other record? Is the record there? Is the record not there? Then do this, then do that. This way, we are guaranteeing that the record is going to exist, right? Because we have this trigger here. We have this trigger-based workflow. Now, we're not done yet, right? There's so many other things that we can do, right? Remember, when the user is created, we have access to their email, right? So over here, this record has access to their email because email is stored on that original table. And so what I can do here is I can send an email to the user. I can say, hey, thanks so much for signing up to our app, or thanks so much for joining this plan, or thanks so much for becoming a member of our amazing community, or something like that. And I can welcome the user, and I can give him a call to action. I can say, hey, if you have any questions, do this, or fill out this questionnaire or this quiz. And how do I do that? Well, I can just search for email, and I can find the node that will allow me to do it, right? So you have these various nodes, and the one service provider that I've used in the past is SendGrid, right? So I can simply select this, send a static email node. Now I have this node. What I need to do is I need to fill out all of these fields. I need to get an API key, and you can simply go to SendGrid here, and you can get your API key, right? This is my SendGrid dashboard here. So all I need to do is go to my API keys here. And as you can see, I already have a key that I've used before. And all you need to do is create a new key, or use this key in your workflow, right? You're going to paste this here, and here you can just fill it out, normally, right? You're going to put your from address, the from name, the to address as an array, right? This is going to be an array, so you can have multiple addresses if you want, your email body, and you can also decide whether you want to enable tracking or not. And after you're done, you're going to hit ship, and that is going to update your new workflow and upload it into Google Cloud, right? All of these workflows run in the cloud, which makes it really nice because they're able to be scaled automatically, right? So you do not need to be concerned with whether, this workflow gets executed once per day, or 300 times per day, or 3,000 times per day. It doesn't really matter. It scales automatically. And you can obviously add more nodes if you want, but it's important to at least have this new user trigger in most of the apps that you're going to be building, because whether you're going to have just this node as the minimal number of nodes, or you might have other multiple nodes that need to be executed when a new user signs up, okay? And this is a lot better doing it here than if you ever would do it in your Flutterflow app. This should never be done in your Flutterflow app. This should always be done as an external kind of this background task, okay? So this is an important workflow that is really easy and actually fun to create using BuildShip. Now, the second type of trigger that I want to show you is going to be a scheduled event. Okay, now this is not going to be a trigger that will get triggered anytime a user signs up or something happens to an app. This trigger will get executed based on a time. Okay, so maybe you have a situation where you need to have something happen every day at 9 a.m. Maybe you want to send your users kind of this morning reminder with their, action list, task list of items. Or maybe you want to create a reminder functionality. So you have some kind of a calendar, and they pick, I want to get reminded, in 2 weeks at 8 a.m. or at 11 a.m. Okay. Anytime you're thinking about time-based triggers, you're going to be using this type of workflow. And as an example, here I have an everyday cron, and cron really means a scheduled trigger. Okay, so if you've never seen the word cron, It's a technical term that means a schedule trigger, a time-based trigger. And so here, what I have here is a trigger that is going to get executed at 9 p.m. in this UTC time zone, right? So you need to set your time zone. So let's say, you're working in New York City, you're going to pick New York and you're going to pick your time here. Okay. So you need to specify the time zone. And once you've set this up, this is going to get executed every single day at 9 p.m. And so what do you want to do? Well, our next node actually sends a push notification to the user. Okay. So every day at 9 p.m., we are sending a push notification to the user. Okay. So this is actually done using Supabase, because I'm using Supabase push notifications. And if you haven't yet seen a video of how I have that configured, you are going to be seeing that there. And so the only thing that we need to do is create a node that inserts a row. Okay, this is simple node, so you can simply go over here, type Supabase, and you can select this node here, create row. And what we're doing here is we're inserting a record into this notifications table that we have. And here we can specify various parameters. Okay, so I'm using this user ID here, and the body of the notification is a 9 p.m. reminder, right? Because this is sent every day at 9 p.m. Okay, so maybe in the app functionality, the user has opted to be reminded at 9 p.m. About a certain thing. Okay, and so now I'm going to display my app, and when we execute it, right, we're going to be doing it in test mode because it's not 9 p.m. now, and I'm not going to wait until 9 p.m. It's quite a while until 9 p.m. And so another really nice thing about BuildShip is that we can do a test mode here. Okay, so I have my app running here. Okay, and it doesn't really matter, where, which page I'm on or anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this notification here, this workflow, as though it's currently 9 p.m. Okay, so I'm going to do test, and I'm going to say test workflow, and I'm going to open my app, and we should see a push notification pop up. Okay, so it's building it, it's executing it now, and now you see this push notification, right? It says here notification from Supabase 9 p.m. reminder. And if you actually pull this down, you can see the notification here, right? So you're going to be seeing it here, even if the app is not running. But if the app is running, you're going to be seeing it here as well. And once again, if you want to see how I did this, check out that video right there, because we're not going to be covering push notifications on the front end in this video. Okay, so this is another really, really useful type of workflow, these scheduled events. And how exactly do you do it? Well, you can simply delete this one, and then whenever you're creating your new workflow, you will need to create a trigger. So all you need to do is select your trigger, and you can do that by using any of these triggers, right? So you have this every day, every hour, every month, every week, or you can also use a more flexible schedule trigger, right? So if I add this trigger here, and this allows you to fine tune the exact time or day of the week or the hour, the minute, etc., that you want this to execute. Okay, so if you have something more specific, you want it to happen every 20 minutes, you want it to happen on Mondays, you want it to happen Monday and Tuesday, you have something a little bit more specific schedule that you're going to be using this schedule. But if you have something that's more predictable, right? So every day at 9 p.m., every day at 8 a.m., right? Etc., right? So if we delete this again and we insert one of these pre-built triggers, right? We have every day, every hour, every month, every week, right? So if I say every week, then I can specify my time zone, I can say time of day, and I can select the weekdays, right? Maybe I just want it to be on the weekdays, right? So I'm going to say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm going to leave Saturday and Sunday out, okay? Or maybe I want to have it just on the weekends, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect this and select that and say done. And when I ship this, workflow is going to be triggered just on the weekends, right? So I have that flexibility depending on my specific use case. And later I can configure the nodes that I want to see executed on this specific time. And as you could have guessed already, this is not something that you can do in your app, right? This is not something that you can do in your web app or mobile app. This is something that needs to be done on the back end, right? Because your app is running. And so if your app is not running on a Monday, how will the user get the notification, right? This is something that needs to be done independently of your app. And then you can tie it to your app using something like push notifications, which is what we have happening here. So another very, very important workflow that's really easy and actually fun to design, build, and launch using BuildShip. Now, the next type of workflow that I want to show you is a type of workflow that you're going to be doing quite a lot, right? And this is a synchronous task. So first, what exactly is a synchronous task? Well, a synchronous task is a task that the user may request that the user will be waiting for, right? So this is a task that should not take a lot of time, but still it may take a little bit of time, but this is a task that we expect the users to wait on, right? So this is not going to be a task that's going to take, 30 minutes or an hour or even 15 minutes. It's going to take maybe a couple of seconds, maybe, 20 seconds, right? But it's not going to, get the user to wait a long time, okay? So as an example here, I have created a sample flow called generate PDF. And the idea here is that you specify a URL, and that's going to go ahead and create a PDF from that URL. So essentially, of a website that the user enters, we're going to go ahead and create a PDF, and then we're going to hand that link of the PDF of the website that the user requested back to the user. And this is a synchronous task because it should not take a lot of time to complete, okay? Now, with BuildShip, all of this is really easy to do, right? This is going to be fairly complex to do if you do not have the right tools to do it. But BuildShip has built-in nodes to do it, okay? So here, we have our REST API call, which means that we're going to be executing this, and this whole workflow is going to be triggered as a call via a URL, as a REST HTTP call, right? So it's not going to be triggered using a super-base event. It's not going to be triggered using some kind of a time or a schedule. It's going to be triggered on demand. It's going to be triggered on demand. It's a very, very important distinction that you need to understand, okay? So when the user requests this, they're going to be passing the URL of the website that they want to have converted into a PDF, right? So if you come back over here and you click on edit, you can see in my request, I have this URL because we are expecting a URL as part of that post request. Now, the next node that we have is this built-in URL to PDF node, okay? So all it needs is a URL, which we have, right? So it's even suggesting it to us because we've defined it here before. And we also have some options here that I'm not really using because I just want a standard behavior, and I'm specifying the file path. So in this case, I'm just saying test PDF. You can name this anything that you want. And so at this point, what's going to happen is the user specifies the URL, it converts it into a PDF, and it's going to store it locally. Okay, it's going to store it locally. But because we need to give it to the user, we are using this other node here called generate a public download URL. And you can actually find this node here. This is a node that you're going to be using from time to time. And so if I search for generate public URL, you're going to find this node right here. And just like I said, this is a node that you're going to be using from time to time. In fact, 3 of the last workflows that I've done for another project, in 2 of them, I was using this, this node here. So remember this node because it's going to make your life a lot easier, okay? And here we are specifying the same file that we've specified here. And the result of this node is going to be a URL, a publicly accessible URL that's going to contain the PDF of that website. Okay, so if you come back over here, and so what we're doing here is we're first creating this structure here. We're saying URL is this download URL, and then I'm doing this JSON.stringify. And the reason we're doing that is because this return node needs to return a string. It cannot return an object. Okay, so this is another thing that you can memorize, this JSON.stringify, all of this here, okay, because here we're creating an object, and here we are turning that object into a string, okay? And so now if we test this, we can actually specify a test URL and see what it returns. And then I'm going to show you an example using a real life proof of concept app. So I'm going to create my sample JSON request here in JSON form, and I'm going to say, well, I want a PDF of Mac Rumors, okay? So I'm going to put macrumors.com over here, and I'm going to test my workflow, right? So when I do test workflow, it's going to execute all of these nodes here, right? It's executing this. Then it's going to jump here. Then it's going to jump here. Okay, let's wait a couple of moments here. And as you can see, it has now finished executing. And you can see that because these test buttons, right, are green. Okay, so as you can see, these are green here. And this is the result that we got. And so if we copy and paste that into our browser, we should see a PDF of Mac Rumors. And as you can see, this is exactly what it is, right? We have the entire PDF of the website, right? All of these pages that we have here. And so now that we've tested it and it works as expected, let me jump into my proof of concept Flutterflow app that I built that does the exact same thing. Okay, so here we have a page. And this is a synchronous task, a sync task, generate PDF. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter macrumors.com here. And the way this app should work is that once we click submit, it's going to generate the PDF and redirect the user directly to open up that PDF. Okay, so I'm going to do submit. It's running, and here it is loading Chrome. We're going to do this, and here it has just downloaded the PDF. We're going to click on open, and it's going to open up this PDF. And as you can see, this is a PDF of Mac Rumors, exactly as was the case when we tested it, except in our app, we have this nice user behavior. It immediately redirects the user to our generated PDF of the website so that the user can consume this website. They can also share it if they want, or save it, or do pretty much anything that they want with this resulting PDF. And as you could already guess, creating such a flow, creating such a workflow or this type of task is going to be a lot easier to do in a specialized tool like BuildShip than doing it in your Flutterflow. And just like how I mentioned this in the previous two workflows that we talked about, this is something that needs to be done in a tool such as BuildShip and should never be done in your Flutterflow app, because there's lots of things happening and it's a lot easier to do all of this here than doing it in your Flutterflow app. Leave the Flutterflow stuff for the UI, for the UI interaction, maybe some database things, but a lot of these other things need to be done here. Now, the next type of workflow that I want to show you is going to be an asynchronous task. Okay, so we just talked about synchronous tasks. Now we're going to be talking about an asynchronous task. Now, what exactly is an asynchronous task? Well, you can think of an asynchronous task is a task that may execute for a long time, or it may not start executing when you request it to start executing. Okay, and that is because a lot of these asynchronous tasks may rely on other services, so it may get scheduled to only start executing like maybe an hour later, or a couple of hours later, or maybe 30 minutes later. But the bottom line is that unlike with a synchronous task, an asynchronous task, you're not really sure when it will finish executing. Okay, it may take a long time. It may not even start for a while, right? There's a lot of unknowns. Okay, and this is also a common situation that you may face as you're building your app. And so in this example, we have an asynchronous task whose job it is to upscale an image. Okay, so you may have an image that's very, very small and you want to upscale it. Maybe you want to have a high resolution image on your screen. Maybe you want to print it as a poster or as a billboard. You want to upscale a small image, right? And we can do this with AI. And because we are relying on third-party tools, we don't really know, when will that task even start? And B, when will that task finish? We don't know any of this, right? And this is a perfect candidate for an asynchronous task, okay? So here we have a REST API call that gets triggered using a request, right? Using a post request. Next, we are taking a screenshot of a specified URL. We're saving it as an image.png, and then we are sending it to a different service, okay? Called Stability AI to upscale it, and we specify the width that we want. Okay, so we want 1024 pixels to be the width, and maybe the original image is going to be smaller, maybe a lot smaller, maybe a little smaller, but regardless, we want it to be upscaled to this width here. Okay. Now, because this is an asynchronous task, we cannot expect the user to wait anywhere from 10 seconds to something like 2 hours or more. The bottom line is we do not know when this is going to finish, and as a result we can't really guarantee a timely completion, and we really cannot have the user wait, right? This is not something that we can tell the user, hey, wait for this to finish. We don't know when it's going to finish. It could be 10 seconds, so wait anywhere from 10 seconds to 10 hours. Okay, we don't know when it's going to finish, but we want you to wait anyway. We cannot do that, right? This is not a really good user experience. So anytime you have an asynchronous task, you need to get the user to submit their job and then, go on their way and continue doing whatever they wanted to do. And then we're going to notify the user using a push notification when we have finished their task, right? When we have fulfilled their request. And this is exactly what's happening here. So instead of us, having a return that we typically do anytime we want to return something in a synchronous task, here we are using push notifications again. So the user submits the task, they keep doing whatever they want to do. Maybe they want to, do something else, maybe they had other tasks lined up, and then when we are done, we're going to send them a push notification that essentially tells them, hey, this is the task that you requested a while back. Well, we are done now. Okay, so this is the result. Okay, and so here we're creating another row in Supabase that will be automatically used to do push notifications. Okay, and so here in this object, I just have a very generic object here, right? So I just specify user ID and the body, hey. But in fact, what we can do is instead of saying body is hey, we can go into our variables and we can specify the upscale image. We can specify the actual result here, okay? And this is exactly what we've just done, okay? So now they're going to be getting the exact, the result, the upscale image that they care about, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a test first. Now, if I come over here, you can see that we need to submit a URL that we want to take a screenshot of and that we may want to upscale, okay? And so here I have an icon of a stop sign, okay? It's a small image. And what we want to do is we want to upscale this image, okay? So I'm going to take this URL here, and I'm going to use it as part of my request, right? So I'm going to come over here. Let me quickly take a look at what it's expecting, right? So it wants this URL. I'm going to do a test. I'm going to come into body. I'm going to form my request. I'm going to say URL, and this is the URL that we want, okay? And I'm going to do a test workflow, okay? Now, when this is done, this user is going to get a notification, okay? It's as though they've executed this request themselves, okay? So we're going to do this test over here. And we're going to open this app so that we can see when we get that notification. Okay, so we're executing this. It's executing this. Now it's upscaling the image. Okay, this is going to take a little bit of time depending on the image that you may want to upscale. Okay, all right, so this is done and we just got this notification here, and that notification had the resulting URL of the upscaled image. Okay, and now if we go to our notifications, this is the last notification here, right? And this here is the upscaled image that was sent as part of that notification there. And now let me jump into my app here and let's execute executed as the user would. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the second screen over here. This is async task. Paste this URL that we want to see upscaled and hit submit. It should hopefully tell us when this image has been upscaled. So now all we need to do is wait. And you might have noticed that we are not telling the user that this operation is in progress. We simply, get them to submit, and then they can continue working on other things that they need to do. And here we have this notification here, right? It has finished, and this is the URL. And now if I jump into my Supabase dashboard, we're going to see a new record here for our newly upscaled image here, okay, that we received as the push notification. Okay, so in these types of scenarios where you just do not know and you really have no control over how long a specific task is going to take, you need to let the user know later on. Okay, you can't have the user wait, as was the case in the previous example where we had some level of control. Okay, so anytime you're doing something AI, you're upscaling image, you're relying on third-party services, right? Third-party tools that may not schedule your task right away. They may schedule it sometime in the future. This is a good opportunity to use an async task pattern. And in this pattern, we send a push notification instead of, just replying to the request, as was the case in some of these other tasks, okay? And again, this is really easy and a lot of fun to develop using BuildShip, because you have lots and lots of different AI services, lots of nodes. So this stability AI, you can find it here. You can just do stability, and there you have stability, right? Modify image, upscale image, image masking, generator, right? Replicate. You have lots and lots of services, and it's a good idea to let the user know later as a push notification. You can complete all of that using just 4 nodes. And once again, this is something that needs to be done in this tool here instead of doing it in your Flutterflow tool. And it's also going to save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle as well. Last but not least, I want to show you another scenario where you definitely need to be using a third-party tool, because your front-end NoCode tool is not going to support this as well. And this is a webhook functionality, okay? And this is something that you're going to be using a lot all the time, and this is something that's not supported by a tool such as Flutterflow, okay? So a very, very simple scenario, okay? We have here a REST API call, and we have here a webhook called Payment Gateway Hook, okay? And all this webhook does is basically listening for data. It's listening for requests. And this is going to be very, very common in the apps that you're building, right? So if you're integrating with Stripe, Stripe asks you to enter your webhook so that it can notify you of any issues, or if you have successful transactions, etc., etc. And many, many services require to you to input webhooks. So what do? You're building a Flutterflow app, and Flutterflow has no way of getting these webhooks. So what do? Well, you need to use a tool such as this one. So here we have a very, very simple workflow where we have created a webhook that we can now hand off to different services, right? Basically, it's a way of us telling this service, hey, this is my number. Call me when something important happens. And when something does happen, guess what? We're gonna let the user know via a push notification. Okay, so exactly the same thing as before. We're creating a row in our Supabase, and that's gonna trigger a push notification. And here we're specifying the user, and the body is payment succeeded. Now this user here, this could be passed from the webhook, right? Because let's say we have a situation where a payment is succeeded, right? The user tried paying for something, and their credit card or debit card has been successfully charged. And as a result, we are going to know who the user is. So because we know who the user is, we can specify it here. But because this is a simple proof of concept, I'm just hard coding a user ID. But of course, in your production app, you're going to be, this variable is going to be dynamic. But the body, it's going to be succeeded, right? In this case, maybe it succeeded, right? Or maybe you're going to have a condition that's going to check some other variables and see if it succeeded or failed. But here it has succeeded. We have a specific user. Now, when anybody hits this webhook, right? We are going to send a push notification, right? So let me show you how this works. I'm going to test this out, and I'm not going to send anybody. It doesn't, this is a simple get webhook, right? So we're not working with body or anything like that. And once this is executed, we're going to get a push notification here, okay? So I'm going to do test workflow, and I'm going to switch back to my app, and I get a notification, payment succeeded. And obviously, maybe it's going to, provide more information, or, maybe it's going to say, well, you have a new user signed up for this plan, or a user bought this product or bought this service, things like that. And this is very, very simple. And there's really no other way of doing it if you are not supporting webhooks, right? Stripe is going to ask you for a webhook, right? I mean, if I want to call you when something happens, but you have no way, you don't have a number, right? Maybe you just move somewhere, or your phone, you got a new phone, you don't have a number. Well, how can I reach you, right? It's the same thing with webhooks, right? It's a way of selling another service, a way to reach them. So a very, very simple scenario, but an important scenario, because you cannot a front-end no-code app building tool is not going to have webhook functionality, because all of this is going to be done for you using a third-party tool such as BuildShip. And obviously you can continue, doing other things. You can create more nodes, but there's also one more thing that I want to show you, is that not only do we have support for a webhook, but we also have support for something else. So if I come back to this trigger, we have this REST API, we have upload, we have all of these triggers. But if I search for email, we have an email trigger, right? So this gives you an email that if a service sends an email, right, it's going to trigger this workflow. And this is great. If you're building like an email client, if you're building something that relies on receiving emails, well, you have that handled as well. So if I add this trigger here, that's all I have here. We have an email trigger. And so all I need to do is select this email trigger and add it here. And that way, our workflow is going to be triggered whenever there is an email, an incoming email that has been received by the system. And this is awesome, because it allows you to build functionality that you wouldn't be able to otherwise build without these amazing tools. Okay, and so these are the 5 main workflows that you need to master, okay, because they will allow you to build powerful and feature-rich apps that are super easy to use and also super user friendly. And also make sure you check out BuildShip, because it makes all of this super easy and super hassle free, as you've seen me design and create. And all of these workflows took me not more than just a couple of hours to create, test, and launch. It's really that easy and that simple. And that is because BuildShip is a tool that's created to do all of this, right? This is exactly the purpose of this tool, and it does it really, really well. Now, this was a BuildShip video, not really a Flutterflow video, but if you want to see how I built my Flutterflow app, I'm going to make it available inside of our amazing Patreon community. You'll be able to view and or clone it. And I'm also going to provide these workflows here in the form of screenshots, so that way you can refer to them if you have any questions or doubt. And remember, that's not all. When you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, but you're also going to get a ton of other things. You're going to get access to all the apps that I publish on this channel. You'll be able to view and or clone them. You'll also get access to extra content. You'll also be able to ask questions. I'm around in the community, so along with other members who are always eager to help out and answer questions, I'll also be able to answer questions and kind of help you guys out if you have any issues with some of the things that I'm doing. But just like how I mentioned previously, the most important thing is you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. So if you're getting any value from any of these videos, if you are learning something new, maybe you're having an aha moment, you've picked up something new, maybe you've realized something that you didn't realize before, then definitely consider becoming a member to support this channel and support my work. And so if all of this sounds like something that you're going to gain a lot of value from, then you can simply click on the first link in the description and join our incredible Patreon community. And with that being said, I hope I see you inside.